Hi, so today we're going to be looking at the top five differences between ChatGPT and Grok AI. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using both these answer engines to simultaneously check what they tell about each other. Okay, so top five differences between ChatGPT and Grok AI, as ChatGPT tells me, is it says ChatGPT uses trained data plus browsing, whereas Grok pulls real time data directly from X. So, Grok, primarily run by X, is an answer engine that is driven through X, which comes from the data from X. Okay. Tone and personality, ChatGPT is professional and safe. Grok is witty, edgy, and more unfiltered. So I just recently came to know that a lot of slang words, okay, are allowed on Grok, which is not allowed on ChatGPT. So for example, I was just looking for a review for this recent movie called Dhurandhar, and all these slang words and cuss words that are used in the movie. Okay, Grok actually gives you a very detailed review about all of those, while all of that does not appear on ChatGPT as it is much more filtered. Accuracy versus freshness, ChatGPT focuses on reliable, structured answers, while Grok prioritizes fast, trending, real time responses. Okay, features and ecosystem, ChatGPT offers advanced tools, plugins, image generation, coding, etc., while Grok is more integrated with the X platform. So as you can see, most of the data that's coming on Grok is coming from X. Safety and content control, ChatGPT is more filtered, more safe for professional use, while Grok is more open but riskier in outputs. So if you compare Grok and ChatGPT, Grok is more like Facebook, Instagram, X, all of that put together, because things are not very filtered, whereas ChatGPT is more like a LinkedIn, which is used for more, I would say, professional use. So let's now look at what Grok has to tell us about these differences. Okay, so personality, Grok says it's witty, sarcastic, rebellious, while ChatGPT is polite, safe, and professional. So here itself, you see most of the differences, right? Witty, sarcastic, rebellious. It's more like a media channel. Okay, Grok is more like a media channel. Grok has minimal restrictions and answers controversial questions, while ChatGPT often refuses or heavily censors them. So ChatGPT, when it was started, if you remember, it was very very careful, and it was very very filtered. So even now it runs on the same principles, whereas Grok has minimal restrictions and answers controversial questions. Grok excels with live X, which is Twitter data for current events, and ChatGPT relies on periodic updates and browsing. So the way both these engines access data is primarily very very different. Grok focuses on maximum truth seeking with less bias. ChatGPT prioritizes safety and alignment. So ChatGPT is a much more careful answer engine. It goes slow, it thinks and then does things, whereas Grok is like much more faster, and it doesn't think much. It seeks the truth, as it says, and it is much more less biased because it has critical thinking, and it is very bold enough to go ahead and give its opinions. Okay, Grok is better for humor, creativity, and real-time insights. ChatGPT is stronger for structured tasks, writing, and polished answers. So ChatGPT is stronger for structured tasks, writing, and polished answers. So I'm going to do another experiment. Let's just go to Gemini. Okay, and let me ask the same question. Okay, top five differences between Gemini and ChatGPT. Give me one line answers. Okay, so I'm now asking it to give me differences between Gemini and ChatGPT. Gemini is natively embedded within the Google Workspace suite. We all know that, relies on third-party connectors and a broader API. Okay, Gemini was built as a natively multimodal model, while ChatGPT originated as a text-first model, then later integrated multimodal. Okay, so Gemini, because of its Google, already, because Google being its father, kind of, the founders are Google. Gemini obviously had multimodal capabilities right from the beginning, because Google already has image searches and shopping searches and all of that, and the images which you search from Google or the videos that you search from Google, and the capabilities of Google was already pretty much more than what ChatGPT had. So ChatGPT slowly developed itself, whereas Gemini was already much more advanced right from the beginning. So Gemini leverages Google search for highly integrated real-time information, while ChatGPT utilizes its own browsing tools such as Search GPT for web access. Context window, Gemini generally offers significantly larger context window, allowing to process and analyze massive amounts of data. Because of Google being a search engine already, the context is much more broader, right? Whereas if you look at, but I would say that, according to my experience, if you look at ChatGPT plus, if you get into the deeper versions of ChatGPT, I think the context in ChatGPT is much more deeper. It may not be broader, but it is much more deeper. Likewise, Gemini excels in research based tasks and cross platform productivity within Google's environment, whereas ChatGPT is often favored for creative writing, logical reasoning, and complex coding workflows. So again, a primary one of the primary differences is, while X is coming from, while Grok is coming from X, right? All the data that's coming from X, Gemini is coming from the data coming from Google. ChatGPT is something which started with its own capability and continues to do so. So some of the primary differences which I find when I try to come up with some images using Gemini versus a ChatGPT. ChatGPT is much more creative. So the creative aspects of ChatGPT undoubtedly I would favor as a person. I love working with ChatGPT more than other tools because even if I look at Perplexity and Gemini, when I compare both of them, I see more technical prowess, or I could say more. It's like, okay, undoubtedly it's more sophisticated, but the creativity levels are less. Even for Claude, I would say that it is much more technically enhanced, and it is great for coding. And likewise, Perplexity and Gemini are best for research and more analytical stuff, but ChatGPT definitely stands out when it comes to a creative perspective. So which answer engine is your preferred answer engine? You can just decide based on this video, and also you can do your own experimenting to see which one works better. Definitely I've not covered all the features out here, like I'm just overall, you know sifting through the top 5 differences, but I'm sure there are many more differences. So if you just go to each one of these websites and try experimenting, try looking for these differences, you'll find many, many more. So wishing you all the very best. And if you resonated with this video, if you like this video, please do subscribe to this channel. Please do reshare this video. Thank you so much.